So yesterday, G2 and Fnatic faced off yet again in the LEC Summer Split Finals. And needless to say, I believe this was the most embarrassing performance of any pro team of all time. Fnatic was ahead in every single one of these games, significantly, I might add. At least 4,000 gold leads. They reached up to 7,000 and 8,000 gold leads in Game 3. And they threw all of them. This is just straight embarrassing. I don't know if G2's that good or if they just live that rent-free in Fnatic's head, but something about it, Fnatic just choked. They were so far ahead in all of these games, and they just threw. Now, I can go and point to, they picked Renekton 3 times in a row, they picked Lucian 3 times in a row, they had Jhin Rel bot lane in the game 1. Sure, they had pretty bad drafts and some useless champions on their teams, but they were ahead. They were in winning positions, and they just lost. I could point to Caps and Hansama performing really well and utterly popping off in most of the games. But it's not like Humanoid is a scrub. He played well too on 3 games of Lucian for the most part. He played well. It's not like Fnatic individually performed awfully. It's just when the moment rose, when that time where you really have to be him and clutch up, they just didn't have it and they choked. And you know what? That's fine. That happens in pro athletics all the time. Sometimes you just don't have it when the moment matters most. And that's just kind of who you are. And I think that's just who Fnatic is. They performed the best, if not top 2 or top 3 in the regular season. They had a bit of a slump around the EWC, but throughout these playoffs, they had it back. They had back their mojo. They were performing very well. They literally just beat G2 in a best of 5 in a really tight 5-game series. But when the moment matters most, they just choke. They just don't have it. And that's what happened. I'm not going to talk too much about the nitty-gritty of the games, but I just want to really focus on the fact that this team, something's just wrong. I don't know if they're just mental boomed or they're just chokers. Probably a combination of all of these things I'm talking about. But I think the biggest thing is that this team is very likely to qualify for Worlds and represent Europe. And if that's the case, it's going to be a really mixed bag of emotions and analytics going into it, because I think that Fnatic has what it takes to win a lot of best of ones against solid teams, or at least compete well with Eastern teams. But when the moment matters most, if they have, a best of 1 tiebreaker to win the group or get out of the group, or something like that, they're going to choke, at MSI and at the EWC, they got smoked by Team Liquid. When the moment matters most, they just can't perform. And so I think that if this team makes it to Worlds, it's going to be rough going, especially if they have games of meaning. I mean, really every game at Worlds is really high stakes and high pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they just completely flatten out and get dumpstered by every single team. Honestly, after this performance, after this series by G2, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're just completely mental boomed and they cannot recover. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose real quick in the season finals for LAC, let alone losing and performing poorly at Worlds. So this series overall yesterday, if you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor and at least watch the highlights to these games that are playing in the background here. It's just embarrassing. Like, this is one of the top teams in the LEC, and they just straight up threw 3 games in a row. They were significantly ahead in all of these games, and they threw all of them. I genuinely don't know how that's possible. I played competitive League for 4 years. I played in best of 3s, best of 5s a lot, and I've never seen anything like this. I really haven't. It's impressive, and honestly, if I were G2, I wouldn't feel that proud of myself. Sure, it's exciting to win the championship again, But it's not like I don't think G2 outperformed Fnatic. I think Fnatic just outperformed themselves. Fnatic beat themselves, made too many mistakes, traded across the map when they were ahead and they didn't have to, and it ended up biting them in the back. It's just really sad to see the complete devastation on the players' faces after they lost, but they deserve it. They performed so terribly when the moment really mattered, and they didn't have a player that could really rise up and have that clutch gene that you really look for in professional competition. So this was one heck of a series. I couldn't explain what I saw after I finished watching it, and I watched a lot of reactions from co-streamers and people like that to the series, and it was somewhat similar across the board. Just not a whole lot of words to describe what happened in this series. It was Fnatic should definitely be embarrassed, definitely feel bad, but hopefully they can come back stronger in the season finals, mentally reset. That's definitely going to be a test of their strength as a team to see if they can mentally reset in time for season finals and hopefully qualify for Worlds. If not, they're just completely mental boomed after this, and they're going to flop out and probably get eliminated after the first round. So I honestly hope that's not the case. I hope that they can get it back together. Obviously, they were in a really bad midseason slump around the Esports World Cup, where they had lost 3 games in a row of LEC, and they, got destroyed by Team Liquid at the EWC. So they definitely have been through adversity this split already. But something like this happening in the grand finals of the LEC against your arch nemesis in G2, I don't know if you can come back from that, but kudos to them if they can, and eventually qualify and maybe perform pretty well at Worlds. I just want to comment on a couple things in the draft. In Game 1, as you can see here, they picked Renekton top, and they have Jhin Rel in the bot lane. When you have these 3 champions on the same team, it's really not looking great for you. They should have been ahead early. They had early winning champions, especially in their solo lanes. They had winning lanes. But it's no wonder they started losing team fights past the 25-30 minute mark, because G2 has that Corki, the Ezreal, and the Kennen scaling. Really, really good front to back team fight, and then Kennen coming from a flank angle is going to be really strong. Whereas the Jhin is just useless, the Renekton is just useless. These champions aren't good. Same thing with Rel. They're just bad champs. The Lucian and the Zyra, mainly the Lucian, really had to put in work this game, which Humanoid did, but it just didn't end up being enough. And I think it's absolutely terrible that Fnatic actually just picked 3 games in a row of Renekton and 3 games in a row of Lucian. Even though Lucian's a good champ, when you're down 2-0 in a series in a best of 5, you gotta try something new, man. You gotta have some kind of draft diversity or flexibility. You can't just keep picking the same crap and expecting different things to happen. That's literally the definition of insanity. So whoever was doing drafts for Fnatic was really not on their game today. 3 games in a row for Renekton. I can only imagine what it was like to be Oscar Ennen. Like, let me play an actual useful champ, and meanwhile Broken Blade gets to play 2 games of Ornn. And even though the Renekton hard won in the early game in Game 3, it didn't end up mattering because the Ornn just scaled, gave all his items away, and once he hits level 16, he's unkillable. So that was pretty funny to see in and of itself. But the drafts, along with the execution of the players, were definitely big contributors as to why Fnatic ended up losing this series. Thanks for watching. See you next time.